B, I survived a hurricane. And today I want to tell you what happened that night. The storm had been coming for days. On the news, they called it Hurricane Esther, and the anchors spoke about it like it was alive, like something intelligent. Watching us, deciding where to strike dot at first. I didn't take it seriously. I grew up on the coast of Louisiana. Storms were part of life. But this one felt different from the start. The air was too heavy, the sky too quiet. Even the birds had disappeared. My husband was away on a business trip, and it was just me and our dog, Milo, in the house. The evacuation orders came in the morning, but the roads were already clogged. Every gas station was out of fuel, and the bridges were closing one by one. By afternoon. It was too late to leave. I remember standing by the window around 6 p.m., watching the palm trees sway in the rising wind. The horizon had turned this strange shade of green, the kind of color that makes your stomach twist. I thought, maybe it'll pass, but the wind said otherwise. By nightfall, the power went out. The silence that followed was short-lived. A low, unending roar began, like the ocean itself was screaming. The first impact came from the back of the house. Something huge, maybe a tree, crashed against the wall. Milo barked until his voice cracked, then hid under the table. I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal. No internet, no messages, nothing. Just darkness, broken occasionally by lightning that turned the world white for a second at a time. Around 10 p.m., the roof started to go. It didn't tear off all at once. It peeled back slowly, groaning, screaming. The sound of nails pulling free is something I'll never forget. I ran to the hallway, clutching Milo, and pushed open the door to the small bathroom, the safest room in the house. We climbed into the tub and covered ourselves with a mattress. The sound outside was indescribable. It wasn't just wind, it was thousands of things being torn apart all at once. The house trembled. You could feel the air pressure shift in your chest with every gust. Then came the flooding. Cold. Water started seeping under the door, first a trickle, then a rush. Within minutes it was up to my ankles. Milo was shaking, pressing himself against my chest. I remember whispering, "It's okay." It's okay, though I didn't believe it myself. Something slammed against the side of the house, hard enough to make the walls buckle. The lights from distant houses had vanished. I realized the entire neighborhood was gone. I tried calling for help one more time. Nothing. That's when I noticed the wind had changed direction. The pressure in my ears popped. Everything went eerily still. No sound, no movement. The air felt electric. I'd heard about it before. The eye of the hurricane. And then, suddenly I could hear everything. Water dripping, debris settling, my own heartbeat. The silence lasted maybe 2 minutes. Then the second half of the storm hit. This time it came from the opposite side. The walls began to shake violently. The bathroom door cracked open under the pressure, and a blast of wind sent the mattress flying. I screamed, pulling Milo close. As shards of glass and rain whipped through the opening, the water rose fast, knee-deep. Then waist deep. I tried climbing onto the sink, but it ripped free from the wall. The sound of tearing wood filled the air. The floorboards beneath us groaned, and then they gave out. We fell through the floor into what used to be the kitchen. Everything was chaos, splintered wood, furniture floating, a refrigerator drifting like a ghost. I fought to keep Milo above the water, my arms burning from exhaustion. Lightning flashed again, revealing the doorway, or what was left of it. And beyond that, black water swirling like a living thing. I pushed toward it, half swimming, half climbing. Choking on the smell of mud and fuel. Outside, the street had become a river. Cars were half submerged, roofs missing, trees twisted into shapes that didn't make sense. I held onto a mailbox as the current tried to drag us away. Milo barked once, a weak, frightened sound, before clinging to my shoulder. The rain was so dense it felt solid. I couldn't tell where the ocean ended and the sky began. Then I saw it, a faint red light in the distance. It flickered, vanished, then appeared again. A signal tower, maybe. Or someone's generator. I told myself if I could reach that light, I might survive. So I started moving. Every step felt like walking through concrete. The current slammed into me, the wind screamed, and the air was full of flying debris, pieces of people's lives turned into weapons. I could feel glass cutting into my hands, but I couldn't stop. Somewhere behind me, I heard a house collapse, the sound echoing through the storm like thunder. The water rose to my chest, then my neck. I pushed Milo up, forcing him onto a floating door. "Stay," I said, even though he couldn't understand. Another flash, the red light closer now. I kept going, half crawling, half swimming, lungs burning, skin raw from the salt and wind dot, and then just as I reached the edge of what used to be the main road, I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The current tore me away from the wreckage, spinning me under the water. I remember the silence under there, complete. Suffocating silence, before I broke the surface again, gasping, screaming Milo's name, but I couldn't see him anymore. When I broke the surface, the world was chaos. The roar of the wind, the crashing waves, the tearing of wood and metal, it all blended into one endless sound. My eyes burned from the salt, my lungs from the effort. I spun in every direction, calling for Milo. Nothing. Only darkness and rain. The current pulled me toward what looked like the remains of a house, half submerged and crumbling. I reached for it, clutching at the wet wood until my fingers bled. I pulled myself onto the slanted roof, gasping, trembling. Water pouring from my clothes in streams. Lightning flashed again, and for a split second, I saw movement, a small shape clinging to a piece of debris a few yards away. It was Milo. He was alive. I crawled closer, using pieces of broken guttering to drag him in. When I finally reached him, he was shivering uncontrollably, his eyes wide and scared, but still holding on. I held him tight against me, whispering his name again and again until the storm drowned my voice. There was no sense of time anymore. Just survival. The wind screamed like a living thing, tearing at the roof beneath us. I knew we couldn't stay there. The water was still rising. I scanned the horizon and saw something, a 2-story building, maybe a small office or gas station. Still standing against the storm. It wasn't far, but between us and it, there was nothing but violent water and floating wreckage. I had no choice. I tied a piece of curtain cord around Milo's collar and wrapped the other end around my wrist. "We're gonna make it," I whispered, though I had no idea if I was lying. Then I slid back into the flood. The current immediately caught me, spinning me sideways, slamming my shoulder into debris. I screamed, fighting to keep Milo above the surface. Every muscle in my body burned. The sound of metal grinding against concrete echoed in my ears as something large, maybe a car, swept past us. At one point, the wind shifted, and I caught the faint smell of gas, sharp, metallic. Somewhere nearby, a pipeline must have burst. I didn't want to think about what would happen if it ignited. After what felt like hours, I reached the base of the building. The first floor was completely flooded, but a metal fire escape was still intact. I grabbed onto it, pulling myself up step by step until we reached a narrow landing under the roof's edge. We were safe for now. I collapsed there, holding Milo close. He was exhausted, barely moving, but still alive. The wind howled around us, bending the metal, shaking the structure beneath our feet. I huddled against the wall, shielding him from the rain with my arms. Time blurred. I must have drifted in and out of consciousness because when I opened my eyes again, the storm had changed. The roaring wind had softened, the rain lighter. Though the sky still rumbled with distant thunder. It was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, the hurricane was passing. I looked around. The world was unrecognizable. Where the neighborhood once stood, there was only water. No roofs, no fences, no cars, just endless dark waves reflecting flashes of lightning. It felt like standing at the end of the world. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too tired to feel anything but numbness. At some point, I must have passed out again because when I woke, the sun was rising, a dull red light cutting through the fog. The air was heavy with the smell of salt and fuel. The water had begun to recede, leaving behind broken wood, twisted metal, and silence, real silence. I sat up slowly, muscles aching, and looked at Milo. He was awake, licking my hand weakly. I smiled, or at least I tried to. My lips were cracked, my skin raw from the cold. We were alive. But we needed help. I stood and looked around for any movement. Smoke. Lights. Anything. That's when I saw it. A helicopter, small and distant, moving across the flooded area. It wasn't close, but it was there. Hope flickered for the first time in hours. I waved my arms, shouting, though I knew they couldn't hear me over the wind. The sound of the rotors grew louder for a moment, then faded. They were leaving. Desperation hit hard. I searched the rooftop and found an old metal sign that had broken loose. I tore off a piece and began flashing it toward the sky, hoping the reflection might catch someone's eye. Minutes passed, nothing. Then, just when I thought it was useless, the helicopter turned. It was coming back. I fell to my knees, crying for the first time since the storm began. As the helicopter hovered closer, the downdraft sent water spraying around me. A rescue worker leaned out, shouting something I couldn't hear, then dropped a harness. Getting Milo into that harness was the hardest thing I've ever done. He was scared, struggling, but when they pulled him up, I felt something inside me release, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Then they sent it back down for me. As I rose into the air. Watching the broken world below, I realized how fragile everything was. The streets I'd walked, the neighbors I'd known, all gone in a single night. When they set me down in the rescue camp, I couldn't speak. My body shook uncontrollably. A woman wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and said, "You're safe now." But I didn't feel safe. Not really. Days passed before I found out how bad it had been. Entire communities gone. Hundreds missing. My house, my street, everything wiped from the map. I stayed at the shelter for a week, helping others where I could. Milo never left my side. At night, when the wind rattled the tents, I would close my eyes and feel my chest tighten, remembering the roar of the hurricane and the sound of the walls breaking. Even now, months later, I still hear it sometimes, in dreams. In the hum of the wind outside my window. People say we were lucky to survive, but that night didn't feel like luck. It felt like defiance, because sometimes surviving isn't about being strong. It's about refusing to give up, even when the world around you is being torn apart. That's what I learned from Hurricane Esther. That's what survival really means.